Welcome to Final Approach with Chris Gregory. I am a philomath who is somebody who loves to learn things. One of the things that I've learned is that everyone has a tale to tell and a lesson to teach. From pilots to farriers to musicians to authors and creators, I'm going to explore my interests while introducing you to some amazing people. Pre-flight is complete and we have clearance, so let's kick the tires and start the fires. Mark Hickox is a highly intelligent and thoughtful heartlander who radiates success wherever he goes or whatever he does. He has worked in several fields and brought his special brand of expertise to the Farrier industry with gusto. As he built his first Farrier business in Montana, he and I would often talk, and I was amazed at how he was able to create and document his business in such a short time. Life had other plans for Mark and his family, so he ended up on the other side of America. But the Farrier industry is hard to leave for those that are made to be a part of it, and Mark's story of coming back to it is a great one. You're going to enjoy getting to know my great friend, Mark Hickox. This one is being brought to you by Victory Racing Plates and Horseshoe Nails. We are cleared for takeoff. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to bring you Mr. Mark Hickox. He's a Heartland grad. He is a body parts dealer. Now he's selling horseshoes and nails. Just an all-around good guy. So, Mark, welcome to Final Approach.
Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate you having me.
So he has previously been on the amazing Mr. Mullins Farrier podcast. I know I'm following Brian here a little bit, but I couldn't help getting this guy because you were on that one at my suggestion. So
that's correct. Yeah. And I keep coming around, so you can't get rid of me. So
thankfully. So Mark, tell us where you're from.
Columbia, Missouri, born and raised, Boone County. Yeah, I lived there till I went away to college, and yeah, that was home.
Did you play sports and all that stuff back then?
Yeah, grew up playing soccer. We lived in town, but we had a farm about an hour away, and grew up playing soccer and swimming and water skiing, and ended up playing football in high school and some golf.
Soccer is football for a lot of
yeah,
folks.
That's right. Yeah, some of the people listening to this might think I'm saying it twice. City kid. But on the weekends and in the summers, I would go out to the farm and work with my dad, and he'd ride me pretty hard.
So your dad is the one that owned the farm,
correct?
And it was his hobby farm, more or less.
Correct. My dad was a veterinarian before he went back to medical school and became an orthopedic surgeon, and so we lived in town, and he was a doctor in town, and I never knew him as a veterinarian except when we were on the farm, and we had AI and embryo transplant at our farm, which was pretty groundbreaking in the early 80s. And he just loved doing that. We had some show Simmental. And so I was able to go to all the county fairs and show cattle. And yeah, grew up raking hay, baling hay, row crops, feeding the cows, all that stuff.
All the Midwest farmer's boy experience.
That's right. We don't call it ranching. It's a farm.
Right. I grew up on a ranch, and there is a difference. If I asked my dad how things were doing on the farm, he would wonder what I was talking about.
Yeah. But we also had cows per acre. And I know there are a lot of people out there that don't understand that either. But in the Midwest, I got to spend quite a bit of time in Montana, and it was significantly different out there. As dry as it is, you have acres per cow.
Oh, yeah. My dad's country, I think it's he's able to get 200 cows because he's got 8,000 acres,
Yeah, exactly.
If you really wanted to stock it heavy, you could get 200 cows on 500 acres here pretty easy.
Yeah, we had almost 2,000 acres in central Missouri, and probably 2/3 of that was crops. And we still had a couple hundred head of cows.
Did your folks still have that farm?
No, my dad passed away when I was a senior in high school.
Oh.
Everything kind of flipped at that point.
I did not know that.
Yep.
Now, he was a pilot, right?
Yeah, this guy did a little bit of everything. He grew up dirt poor in California, Missouri, and grew up with, sheep and hogs and cows and going to the county fairs and all that, and just wanted to be a vet. And then he became a vet and decided that he liked being a student and learning medicine. Especially, he was doing orthopedics with the veterinary work, and he was an associate professor at the University of Missouri Vet School while he was a resident for orthopedic surgery. So, yeah, he was plating long bones on animals before he was plating long bones on humans and then replacing joints.
But you got to fly with him quite a bit.
Yeah, I did. I flew with him quite a bit.
Did you ever want to learn?
Yeah, I think I told you this when I was in school. That's probably one of my bigger regrets. I was young and didn't understand how easy it would have been for me to, have we had our own plane, and so it would have been so easy to get some seat time in a Beechcraft Bonanza. And at the time, that was a really, really nice ride. So yeah, I could have gotten a lot of seat time, and I was 15, 16, and just had the world by the tail. I knew everything I knew, and that's all I needed to know.
Of course. Yeah, many 15-year-olds are similarly plagued. In fact, I myself was.
That's
Hard
correct.
to believe.
I've read your memoirs.
Oh, okay. So if you guys have had a chance to look at For the Want of a Shoe, The Horse Was Lost, I kind of tell the story about going to military school and well, I tell the story from growing up on the ranch, but yeah, I would have been a difficult child looking back, I think.
The opportunities that are there for so many kids that just aren't taken advantage of is amazing.
It is amazing. And then the old guys like us, because we're about the same age.
We are, yeah.
Yeah, so we look back and we think, oh, those young whippersnappers. But the old guys were looking at us saying those young whippersnappers. So the
Absolutely.
wheel will continue to turn.
Absolutely. Yeah. All those times I heard you'll learn. I was the kid that, for those of you that have some ranch experience, you understand, but I was the one that had to pee on the electric fence.
Okay.
You couldn't tell me, you couldn't show me. I had to do it myself or I wasn't going to learn it. So,
And does that make you curl up when you do it? I haven't done.
I find it really hard to believe that you haven't done that.
So got done with high school. Did your dad? He didn't die in a plane crash.
No. He had cancer. He actually passed away pretty quick. Yeah, he was diagnosed in spring, and he was gone by January, or passed away in January. And he lost, 100 pounds, and was bedridden, hospice for the last 4 to 6 weeks of his life. And it was just, you never want to see a loved one go through that, and that was tough for the probably the most influential male that was in my life.
Yeah, man. Of course. Wow. So you went to college in Colorado, right?
I did. I graduated from Colorado State University and in '92, and I have a bachelor's in business, and computer information systems was my major.
Okay. Well, computer information systems in those days are a little different than they are now, huh?
I would spend hours in the computer lab writing code. And so the code back then, when you turned on a computer, there was a little blinking thing in the corner of your screen, and that was how you started your computer. It's called a DOS prompt, and you had to give it commands at that prompt in order for anything to happen in the computer. But my senior project for information systems was I wrote a blackjack program.
Okay.
That was it. And now that would be, I mean, you could do it on a calculator probably, but back then it took a whole computer and reams of paper printed out code to do that. So,
I'll be danged.
yeah.
After college, when did you meet Christian? So those of you who don't know, Christian is his wife. Did you meet her in college?
No, so Christian was born and raised in Joplin. And so I spent some time in Denver after, I went home to Columbia for 6 months, and then I spent some time, a couple of years in Denver. I thought that I was going to find a computer job that I really liked. And it turned out I worked for a computer software company, and I did support. So I was like the phone guy, the IT guy that you call. And so I enjoyed the customer interaction.
You did.
I did. Yeah, I did.
Were all those customers calling nice, friendly, and happy?
Absolutely not. And honestly, the funny thing is, this is back when it was the early modems, when you had to hear the noise when you called, when you turned on your modem and all that stuff and hooked into a computer. And so we would have to hook into their computer and try and diagnose their problem. It wasn't like you could FaceTime someone and they could put their phone behind the computer and show you the wires. You had to dig inside the computer, from across the country. So we learned a little bit about interacting with people. And it's funny, I've always been in, different industries and career paths and that kind of thing, but it all came back to working with people.
Absolutely. Which is one of your strong suits.
I think so. And it probably wasn't originally, but because I was kind of a rebellious kid and just did what I wanted to do. I had some good leadership training, when I was young, and then I was, president of my fraternity in college, and had some opportunities to do different things that gave me confidence in my early 20s, which a lot of people in their early 20s don't need confidence. That's the last thing they need. But
They got confidence in the wrong thing often.
you're exactly right. And I was probably that way too, but I didn't have a father anymore. And so I kind of needed reassurance that I was doing things correctly, because I felt like I didn't have a net anymore. It was a very, transformative period of my life to go to college, get a degree, actually finish something on my own, and then find my path.
How'd you end up in Colorado? What prompted you to go that far west?
So my dad's physician's assistant, his sister-in-law, so it was his wife's sister, lived in Fort Collins, Colorado. I grew up watching Mizzou football. I was on the sidelines with my dad, and so I was a huge Mizzou fan. And I applied to all the schools that were back then in the Big Eight.
Were you wanting to play football?
No, no, no. I just, those are just the schools I knew, and so it was like Nebraska, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma. My dad had a bad experience on the sideline at University of Colorado and University of Kansas, just, fans getting rowdy and throwing things and stuff like that. And so he had a bad feeling about those two places, but I grew up skiing, and we would go on a ski trip every year, and I really liked the mountains and still do. And so, yeah, I had a connection in Fort Collins and ended up visiting the school, and that's where I went.
I'll be dang. Okay.
So after I lived in Denver for a couple of years, I didn't like the office. And I tell people, some people are made for working in an office, but my window faced west in the tech center. And I had to move my head about 30 degrees to the right, and I could see the foothills. That was torture for me, to be sitting in an office and be able to see the foothills and think of all the things I could be doing out there.
So I lived in Brighton from late 91 till mid 94.
Mm-hmm.
So when were you there?
So about the same time, I moved there in 93. I graduated from CSU in 92, and then I didn't go back to Missouri until August. And then I was back out in February of 93. And then I moved back to Missouri in 95, right at the beginning of 95, and moved to our lake house. We had a house at Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri. And I was doing a few different jobs there. I actually had 3 jobs just trying to make some
What
money.
were those? Were those computer jobs? Or?
No, one of them was cell phone sales, which was kind of funny that you think, you were sitting in an office again, but I wasn't. Back then, you had to actually go to businesses and try and sell them a phone. And it was the package with, the minutes, and there was no texting. It was a flip phone, all that stuff, or a bag phone if you wanted one for your boat. But it was a good area. It was a lot of fun. I ended up, I was the host, and then became a bartender at one of the nicest restaurants at the lake, and that was an experience also. And then the other one was I worked for a boat dealer.
So all of these are dealing with people.
Yeah. That's what I said before. I got my break to get into medical device sales in 95, and it happened to be with my dad's best friend that used to always come into the restaurant that I was working at. And he was like, "Hey, you need to, we haven't spent any time together. You need to come up." And he was like an uncle to me. And he was like, "You need to come up and have lunch with us." And I was like, "Great, no problem." So I went up for lunch and that Sunday, and I got a full on interview and ended up going to work for him at his medical device distributorship.
Okay. So that's
95,
huh?
Yep. Moved to Joplin in 97. I was the only single person in the distributorship, and they had an opening and they needed someone right away. And so I went down to Joplin on a Friday, and I was covering my first case there on a Monday.
And by covering your first case means you were scrubbed up and in the
I was standing in the operating room in scrubs with a mask on, helping a surgeon, perform a procedure with our implants.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And did you know much about the implants at that point?
Yeah, I mean, that was 2 years in, so I felt like I knew. It's kind of like Horseshoe.
Oh, okay. So you'd already been around it.
I was in Columbia for 2 years working for him. Yeah, in 95 till 97, I was in Columbia. So yeah, it was a little over a year and a half.
But you weren't in the hospital up there.
I was, yeah. In fact, I was in the hospital where my dad had been the chief of staff. So believe me, I would never have been successful in medical device if that hadn't have been my break, because they overlooked so many of my mistakes and taught me so many things about what to do and not to do in the operating room. And I worked with a guy that I really liked, but he and I had very different styles in sales and interacting with people. And so I was able to learn from him what I didn't want to do, and from the operating staff and everybody that still had really great memories of my dad, how to interact with people in the operating room. So yeah, they taught me a lot.
That's pretty cool. I do a lot of these interviews. Now I'm starting to see so many of a common thread. So many of the things that happen to people happened because of who they were, who they knew. It's like you said, if it hadn't been for your dad, they wouldn't have forgiven you those.
No, no, they'd have thrown me out on my ear. Yeah. When I was in Joplin and in 97, they gave me an entire territory that was really going downhill. It was at the bottom of the hill, and it was a huge territory, a lot of potential, but it had been mismanaged. And thankfully, the one surgeon that was left that you and I are mutual friends with,
Was this David?
this is David. Yeah. He would still use an occasional product from Larry, my distributor. And because of Larry, he let me in his operating room and allowed me to get to know him, get to know his family. And back then his kids were little, and we just hit it off. We had a lot of common interests, and I was single and happy to go out to his farm and go hunting or go fishing or go to the lake and go wakeboarding, whatever. So yeah, it was fun.
Very cool. Yeah, I was at his farm last week. We did the horses for Cindy.
Yeah.
When did you meet Christian?
So Christian and I met in 2000 on a blind date. We were set up, and it was her uncle was my Ever Jones investment representative, and her aunt kept telling me that I needed to meet her niece, and I kept saying, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I would see him at like Chamber of Commerce functions and things like that. And they would say, yeah, we need to get you guys together. Well, they gave me her number, and finally, I actually had just closed on my first house. And I remember like it was yesterday, I was on the porch of this house ripping out a bench that had been on there. And it was like almost 5 o'clock in the evening. I think it was even a Friday evening. And I was like, well, this is perfect. She won't be home. I won't have to talk to her and all that. And I called and she answered. And I was like, oh man. And turns out we kind of hit it off on the phone. And I'd never seen her and didn't know anything about her, but
Did the aunt say she had a nice personality?
yeah, she said she had a great personality,
Okay.
so I was leery. It just so happened that, like I said, I'd been working on this house, and I was like, well, hey, we should go, grab a bite to eat or something sometime. And she's like, sure, and I was like, well, where do you like to eat? I ended up taking her out to dinner that night. And yeah, I was just blown away when I met her. I mean,
She's amazing. Yeah.
yeah, she's beautiful. And I don't know why she went out with me, but her judgment must be poor. But anyway, we met then, and we basically have been together ever since. We were married in '02, and Eve was born in '06. And so yeah, I just bought this house and then got into a long-term relationship and got married and all of that. And so that was great, obviously, until the tornado. We were in that place for 11 years. And
Let's jump to that then. So you're living in Joplin, and that tornado's been like 10 years or
it's crazy.
12 years.
12, yeah.
Okay, so for those of you that are not aware, in 2011 there was a tornado was it May? I believe it was May.
May
That
21st, I believe, or 22nd.
it was a devastating event that ripped through Joplin, tearing down hospitals, homes, and killing almost 200 people. Right?
162, I believe.
162. Yeah, it was. And the stories that came out of that. So now, a little bit more history. David Black is Dr. Black from Freeman, and he is a knee and hip replacement specialist,
Orthopedic surgeon, yeah.
orthopedic surgeon who was good friends with Mark. Take it from there. You guys were coming back from Scotland, right?
So yeah, like I said, Dave and I would kind of plan trips and fun things to do when we weren't in the operating room, and our families, we'd get together. And so, yeah, we were pretty close, and both of us had wanted to go on a golf trip across the pond, of course, and go to St. Andrews. And so we planned that. And I actually landed in Kansas City with Dr. Esch and Dr. Black, and walked out of the airport, and it just looked dark. We were coming back from Scotland, just got in, and it just looked dark to the south, even in Kansas City. And I was like, well, that's kind of crazy. That's really bad. And I pulled it up on my phone. I pulled up the radar, And I don't even remember. I might have had a BlackBerry back then. I don't remember, but I pulled up the radar and it was like maroon right outside of Joplin, just to the west of Joplin. And I was like, guys, that storm is right on top of Joplin. And I was like, I've never seen this color on the radar. And so we kept going, and we were about 20 minutes south of the airport, and both of their phones just blew up. About 10 minutes later, Christian got a hold of me and said, tornado hit the house. It's raining in the basement. I need you home now.
But she had cell service.
She used the landline.
So even though it took the house on top, there was still a
Yeah, it was a
well,
landline. Yeah, it was crazy. We were at the leading edge. They said it was probably an F3 when it hit our house. We were only probably 2 miles from St. John's, and it was an F5, one of the strongest, probably the strongest tornado ever recorded. It broke the anemometer at St. John's.
wow.
And rolled their helicopter up like a tin can. So,
Well, I saw pictures of your house afterwards. It was weird, the walls that were and the walls that weren't, wasn't it?
if you pulled up to our house, you would say, yeah, okay, part of the roof's gone. That's, that's bad, and that section of the house, that looks bad, but I bet you could rebuild it. Well, it rained for the next 7 days. It rained 7 inches. If your roof was gone, your house was unlivable.
Devastated.
Yeah.
Okay, so that happened, and your wife says, "We're out of here," right?
We had conversations, so we ended up buying a house right away. We found one that week. And so we bought a house right away. We were fortunate we could get one, without having our insurance claim and all that. And so we were settled. And it was probably a couple years later when we just kind of had a family meeting, and it was one of those, I can't live here anymore, anywhere but here.
Every time a storm rolled up, Eve and Christian were both.
We had a walkout basement in our next house, and we still bought a twister safe that was big enough for 3 of us and a dog to be in there.
So twister safe is a tornado shelter.
Tornado shelter, yeah. And even with, a walkout basement, that was very important to her. So, and Eve, she was 4 when the tornado hit, and didn't really have a grasp of the devastation. But if it was thundering or raining hard at night, it was crazy. When she was 5 years old, we would have to tell her what color the radar was, and we would have to say, it's only green tonight. That's a rough go for a kiddo. And so yeah, after a while, I was thinking about making a change, but kind of my stock was as high as as I felt like it was ever going to be in my career.
But you were making serious money, right?
Yeah. I had my biggest year ever in sales. I was sales rep of the year nationally for this company in 2013.
And with that came all of the trappings, right? So
yeah,
trips and money and whatever.
Trips and money, and they call it the golden handcuffs. So the surgeons, there are some surgeons that will treat you poorly face to face and in professional settings, because you're kind of like their slave. They know you're not going to leave because you can't make money like that anywhere else. And fortunately, I got to the point where, we saved enough. We felt like we had, we had something greater that we needed to do or wanted to do. And so we were just trying to figure out what that might be. And it was funny. I used to drive up and down it was 71 back then by the Horseshoeing school. And so I called you, and I signed up for the blacksmithing course after I was serving my non-compete. And that was a whole nother deal. I left the company I was with and got hired by a competitor. And in order for them to hire me, they had to pay me for a year to not work.
What a position.
Yeah.
Huh?
And they paid me based on last year's salary. Well, that was my biggest year ever in the entire history of my orthopedic career. And so golf didn't do it for me anymore. I mean, I played over 70 rounds of golf that year, and I was stuck at a 13 handicap, and I was just like, you know what, this isn't it. And so I started looking for something else to do. And that's when I came to the blacksmithing course, and I met Steve Roberts and Terry Tucker, and ended up riding with Steve on Fridays and thinking, this might be kind of cool. And yeah, sure enough, then in 16, I was signed up.
Yeah. So the next year you did blacksmith course and the full 24-week class.
Yeah, which I highly recommend. You can get your bleeding and blisters out of the way the first 2 weeks before you have to start on your projects.
Yeah, that blacksmith course is such a bonus or a
It
benefit to
really
the
is.
incoming guys.
It really
You don't
is.
have to worry about the horses or the anatomy or all the other stuff happening if you have that opportunity. Okay, so now you and I became great friends during that blacksmith course, and you used to watch me limp every day. I was in the midst of my stem cell injections and everything. You're like,
Chicken bones,
yeah.
your voodoo treatments.
If somebody said, "Hey, I'll inject this in your knee, it'll make it feel better," I'd go give it a try.
Yeah.
And you kept saying, "Well, you need to go see Dr. Black." And so I've got a really good knee, and my old good knee is my bad knee, and it's replaced in January. I got the date and everything.
That's great. The thing I told you, you may not remember, but there will be a day, and it's hard to imagine it right now because of everything you've been through with the surgery and the next surgery and all that. There is going to be a day when you don't think about your knees, either one of them. And that day you're going to go, man, I'm glad I did this.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm sure you're right. Or a day you won't think about your nephew, maybe.
Perfect.
All right. Okay, so let's talk about your horseshoe a little bit, because you went from here to Red Lodge, Montana, where there's been how many tornadoes?
I think there's been one in the whole state in like the last 10 years or something. So
Yeah. So
it's a big state.
There are a tornado is a weather phenomenon that could happen anywhere. So
Mhm.
it doesn't happen as much in Montana, obviously. And then I got a call from you like 6 months in, and it was like getting a report from a stockbroker. So tell us about your record keeping. It was amazing.
Oh yeah, that was fun. So that was in your book. You have lined out how a farrier can and should charge, set their price point, and then when the students are here, they'll often hear that whatever you make your first year, you can plan on doubling that the next year because you're just getting better, you're getting referrals, you're getting busier, and it snowballs. Well, then in the third year, you can almost plan on that doubling.
So you remember all that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so my challenge when I got out there and was running my own business was, I want to see if this guy's right, and I want to see how close this is. And so I kept track.
No, I don't think I say in the book. It's like you're calling me. Okay, so I'm going to be $11.71 ahead on.
I kept track of all of my trims, all of my half sets, and all my full sets for 3 years. And I'll be darned if Chris Gregory wasn't right. So
It worked out just like that for you.
It was almost exactly like that. And had I been in an area that was less seasonal, I would have exceeded that for sure. Just because it's the proverbial snowball effect. It just gets bigger.
Yep.
We had a 6-month shoeing season in Montana, and unless you were in one of the big cities, which I was not, my county didn't have a stoplight. So,
Nice.
and I tried to not leave my county as much as possible because there were so many horses and just so many good people. And I named my business Red Lodge Farrier Service for a reason. I didn't want to leave Red Lodge. I wanted to be the person in the community that was shoeing horses. And like I told Christian, that was some of the happiest, probably the happiest 3 years of my life.
Really?
Absolutely.
Well, I remember our conversations. They used to be. It was amazing how you progressed through those 3 years, and watching your skills grow and your business grow, and all of that was pretty cool. And then, unfortunately, you had a little medical problem. You want to talk about that?
I was diagnosed in, I guess it was late 2018. Well, no, it was probably right after Christmas, 2018, 2019. December 2018, January 2019, whatever. And I ended up having surgery on my arm at the end of January of 2019 to remove skin cancer. And it was on my right bicep, upper arm. And it's not that it was a huge thing that they had to remove, but they have to take what's called the margin. And so they took about the size of a quarter off of my arm in skin. And it was only about 2 millimeters thick. So
should have been a simple in and out.
Simple. But when you have a skin cancer like that, they always want to rule out lymphoma. And so they take a lymph node, they call it a sentinel node. And so they took that out of my armpit and it came back clean. I was clean. I was cancer free from that day forward. And all I had to do was let my wounds heal and rehab. And I was back in business, which was perfect because my, shoeing business was going to start in late March, early April again. and then really ramp up, by June. And the first 4 weeks, I was still doing an occasional trim, and I would come home and my arm was just blown up like a sausage. And the oncology PT was super sweet. And she, gave me these arm sleeves and gave me, different techniques I was supposed to do to get the lymph fluid out of the collection of lymph fluid out of my limb, my arm. And so I would do that every night, and it just wasn't working. I would go to bed with an arm that looked like a sausage, and I would wake up with an arm that looked like a sausage, even after doing everything I was supposed to do.
So did it hurt to bend and squeeze your fingers and all that?
It was discomfort. So just imagine your arm, about maybe 2 pounds heavier, just all the time. Just, it's not,
And thicker everywhere.
and thicker everywhere. Yeah. So it's not debilitating, but it's annoying and it's uncomfortable. And supposedly you can do some damage if that continues. But anyway, I sat down with her and I said, what do I need to do? You got to fix me. Well, do you know how to do anything else? And I was like, what are you talking about? And I'm a right hand dominant farrier. What are you talking about? And she said, this could take between 10 and 30 months.
And so what caused it? Just the removal of the lymph node?
Yeah. So lymphedema. So lymph system is not functioning the way it should. It's had an interruption. And so your arm doesn't drain. I told Dr. Black, I told everybody I knew. I was like,
yeah, so you're well connected in the medical community.
Yeah.
So
I was like, what is going on? And they said, don't worry about it. It'll go away. But if it doesn't, that's a super rare thing. And I would call them back and I'd be like, this isn't going away. Well, maybe you ought to see somebody, And so, yeah, I had lymphedema, which was where my arm would not drain. So 10 months, I'm sitting there, I'm an adult. I make adult decisions. I'm going into shoeing season and I'm thinking, she's telling me I can't shoe horses for 10 months. I am going to make nothing this year. I'm probably, going to have a hard time keeping my business. And if it ends up being 30 months, there's no way, I might as well do something else. Well, we happened to be going to visit my mother in Florida for spring break. And so I had this surgery the end of January, and in March, we're going on spring break. When I was down there, I called a buddy of mine that was in orthopedics and I said, hey, you don't need any help, do you? And he was like, oh man, when can you start? And so we had this opportunity to move to the town where my mother lives and start, to go back into medical device sales. And it was a consultant position, so it was only 18 months. And so it was kind of a stopgap. And I thought, well, I can always go back shoeing horses, maybe we can turn this into something. It's hard to say. And then at the end of 18 months, well, COVID hit, lockdown, all that stuff, while we were down there. I mean, this is the sequence of events. You can't make it up. It was just so ridiculous.
It would make a good novel, huh?
Oh, yeah.
So you moved down there in March of 2020?
So I was there May 2nd of 2019.
2019. Okay. So that's 11 months before COVID, 10 months?
Yeah. And I shut my business down. I did my last Red Lodge Farrier service. Let's see. I got there on Monday. My last trim was on Friday.
And were you still blowing up every night, your arm?
Oh yeah. It was a nightmare. I mean, I had to wear this sleeve 24 hours a day. Yeah. Driving was, there's no exertion with driving, but the fluid collects and you can't drain it because hanging your arm is the worst thing you can do. So you have to hold your arm up or, have this sleeve on that and doing these exercises. I had a 36-hour car ride that I had to go down to Florida, and it was a nightmare. But ended up, we had an opportunity in Naples, Florida, which we never expected that we would have, and just feel so blessed to have been able to have been there and try and build a relationship with my mother while we were there, and let Eve have a relationship with her. And then, so yeah, we were there for 2 years.
Okay, so let's just clear something up. You were raised by your mom and dad in Colombia.
I was adopted at birth.
Okay, and so your adopted father's the one that died.
Yes.
And you met your birth mother, if I remember right, while you were a Heartland Horseshoe School student.
I was at Heartland Horseshoe School, sitting in that room right in there.
I remember.
When I got the phone call. It still makes me emotional just thinking about it. But yeah, it was the state of Missouri, the adoption or the state agency that controls the adoptions had changed their laws. And if you were seeking to find your parent or your adopted child that you gave up, if the other party was seeking also, it was a match. Well, we matched when I was here in shoeing school, and yeah, I had my very first conversation right out there behind the shoeing rack there. So yeah, it was,
And it was really emotional, wasn't it?
oh, hugely emotional because yeah, obviously I never expected, anything to come of it. I just thought, yeah, it would be kind of neat. And but the opportunity to thank her for giving me up to for adoption to to good people.
Because
Uh,
you did have an incredible childhood, right?
oh, yeah, I mean, until my folks got divorced when I was 13, everything was good with me. But it's weird not knowing any blood relatives because every time you have a doctor's appointment, they're like, hereditary, type conditions, you're filling stuff out on forms for school or whatever. And you're like, medical history? I don't know.
So have you met more blood relatives besides your mom? Do you have any
Yeah.
brothers and sisters I haven't heard about?
Uncle. Yeah,
Uncle?
I have an uncle. I met him at in Bentonville. So yeah,
Oh, yeah.
he lives in the Bahamas, and it was just neat to hear the family history. She was a 20-year-old college girl that got pregnant, and back then, if you were Catholic and in 1969 and got pregnant, you went away and you came home not pregnant. And so her brother was at the University of Missouri and she was at Rutgers in New Jersey, and she went to University of Missouri, stayed with her older brother, had the baby, put it up for adoption, and then she went back to New Jersey and finished, college.
No, what about your birth father? Have you
I don't know anything about him.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know anything about him.
Well, that's so your mom doesn't tell you, I guess.
She had a name. She contacted him and he wasn't interested.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's all. Yeah,
That's where that
that's as
ended,
far
huh?
as it went. Yeah. In fact, I think the quote was, if you didn't think it was important enough to tell me at the time, you don't need to tell me now. So there you go.
I'll be dang.
Yeah.
Okay, so you lived in Florida for a while, got to know your mom,
Yeah.
and you were back selling medical devices.
So medical devices just like before, but not for myself. I was an employee.
But you really that business really turned around for you, right?
Yeah, we grew that business substantially, really, in the 6 months until, well, I guess it was like, yeah, whatever, 8 months until COVID, until the lockdowns. We grew it significantly, like $1 million. And in medical device, $1 million isn't. I mean, it's a lot of money, but it's not a whole lot of parts. But when you're starting at 500,000,
You had $1 million to that. That's a
yeah,
lot.
you add $1 million to that. It's a pretty good jump. So again, it was relationship building. It was being reliable. It was getting to know the people.
Are you saying basic business skills?
Imagine that. Well, see, that's the thing. They hired me as a fixer, and there was a guy already there, and he couldn't get it done. So they brought me in, and all of a sudden the numbers are up $1 million on top of what they already had. And I was mentoring this guy into the proper way to build a business. Then COVID hit and my contract ended, like I said, 18 months. And so basically,
Did COVID devastate that business?
no, we couldn't go into they paid me for a month to sit at my pool, 5 weeks to sit at my pool, and we just couldn't go in. They were doing no elective procedures, and we really didn't have a whole lot of trauma business at that time. If you have trauma business, you're fixing broken bones with plates and screws that we also sold, but there are competitive companies that had the majority of that business, so we didn't go out. I mean, we just
Wow.
didn't have to. And but if you were in lockdown anywhere in the United States, Florida was a good place to be. It was relatively open because of the political environment there, and it was just pretty. I enjoyed sitting by my pool. Our family did really well just because we're good together. We don't have to be apart. We can be together. And
Isn't that a nice thing to have in a wife?
oh, amazing. Yeah, and a kid. She's as much of it as anything. And we decided, in fact, not too long ago, we were sitting around the kitchen table and we decided that we don't miss Florida. We miss lockdown in Florida because we enjoyed each other and the place that we were.
Okay, so now you're in Florida. We're still staying in touch, even though you're not shoeing horses.
Right.
So you and I have been kind of like long lost brothers for since I've met you. And now I get a call, and you're changing again.
Changing again. Yeah, that was the company that I was working for after the 18 months was up, or right at the end of the 18 months. They said they would not renegotiate my contract because they weren't negotiating any contracts because of COVID. And they wanted to give me a 6-month extension. And I said, I won't work for that. They said, well, no, hold on. We can figure it out. We can figure it out. And I said, well, I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm going to call a headhunter right now and get this figured out. Well, the headhunter told me I needed to update my LinkedIn profile. And I went on LinkedIn and I searched the word equine. And like the third thing that came up,
A lot of equine related stuff in the body part business.
yeah, no, I just curious, it's like I said, being a farrier, I'm not an exceptional farrier by any means, but it was a business that I really enjoyed and really loved and took a lot of pride in. And so if I could get back into that, I thought
But your arm wouldn't let you do it yet, right?
during lockdown, I got out in the shop and I started making shoes. I hadn't been under any horses. They extended my 2 years for the journeyman. And so I thought, well, you know what? I've got time. I'm just going to go out. I had a really nice shop and I had fixed it up. And I just thought, I kept all my gear. I'm going to try and get my journeyman again. I passed my bar shoe and my written first time, and I just hadn't passed my horse. And then I had my surgery, and I thought I'll pass my journeyman and that'll get me back into shoeing horses. And I didn't get that done because I didn't have enough horses to work on. But anyway, so I had updated my profile, and
Is your arm good now?
at that time my arm was pretty good. I could build shoes.
So if you would have had to, you could have gone back to shoeing, you think?
I feel like I probably could have. I mean,
Okay.
I'll never know because, I had over 300 head on my books in Montana and I haven't had since. So I don't know for sure, but I've never had an issue
So you don't have problems
with
now?
my arm. No, since. And so I really don't think that I could overwork it at this point
Okay. All
and
right.
go back to that. But anyway, yeah. And then I saw the Victory position. They were looking for a sales manager, and
Okay. So folks, if you don't know, Victory is a very, very historic American company. Tell us about Victory.
I can do that. So it's the Victory Racing Plate Company, and they're located in Baltimore. They took the aluminum racing plate and turned it into a viable option through tempering and different aluminum alloys to use aluminum racing plates rather than training racehorses in steel and then shoeing them in aluminum for race day and then putting them back in steel and shoeing them in aluminum for race day and going back and forth.
And they've been around for how long, Mark?
Since 1929.
1920. So we're coming up on a 100-year anniversary.
100-year anniversary of
In 5
developing the
years.
technology of having a toe grab in an aluminum racing plate and having the durability to last a full cycle, 4 weeks. So, and of course they have, the nails and the Hoof Life line, the True Flight pads, and the Elite line of hunter jumper type shoes. So yeah, it's a neat company. And when I saw the job posting, I yelled down the hall to Christian and I said, "Hey, I'm sending my resume in." And she was like, "Oh yeah, what's it for?" And I said, "Well, I might not get this job, but I bet I get an interview." And since then, it was all Zoom interviews, and I actually never met anyone face to face during the whole hiring process. It was all board meetings over Zoom and all that.
Because of COVID.
Because of COVID, yeah. But I was the only person that applied that had Farrier experience and sales experience. And I mean, there had plenty of people that applied, but no one had that combination.
So they would get a farrier or they would get a salesman.
Correct.
Okay. Well, and so since you came on board, we started using Victory nails. And I got to say, I need to touch wood before I say this, but our shoe loss has just plummeted. The nails are solid. Where the junction of the nail comes out of the bottom of the horseshoe is extremely strong. Your nail technology must be on point because generally every horseshoer is going to lose shoes. It is just a part of the business. I know some horseshoers that almost have to schedule a day a week to put on lost shoes. And that's just the way it is. But if you own a horseshoeing school, you expect to lose more. While we do lose, I bet you we have to worry about it once every 2 weeks. When you think about the number of horses that go through here that are shod by students, it's remarkable. And I really give a lot of credit to the Victory nail. We use some competitor brand. I'm not going to say any brand names. I won't say it. But a few years ago, there was a competitor that had some problems with shearing, and we had one day we had on a Wednesday we had like 5 head come in, missing shoes with the nail still in the foot,
Oh boy.
and we used clips,
Yeah.
And I called the rep. She was a good friend of mine, and I didn't cuss, but I was like, "Hey, what in the world is going on?" And unfortunately, they just had some I don't know if it was tempering, or I don't know if it was just the actual metal problems, but that was a rough go for a little while. So far, the Victory nails have been amazing for us. So if you're a horseshoer that hasn't tried them, and if you have any shoe loss, you might give them a try. I've been very I guess been very thankful.
Well, we thank you for using them, giving them a try. I mean, I think this has been just so fun since we moved back to Arkansas. So I started with Victory in Florida and enjoyed that, because Florida is a huge horse state. It's top 2 or 3 in the country. But it was hard to do my job from Florida because of the location of the airport and having to fly. If I had to cross the country, that was just an unfun extra amount of time. And at the time, my wife's parents, their health was not as good as my mother's health. And so we felt like we should probably be closer.
And they're still in Joplin.
So now they're in Joplin. They were in Branson at the time, but yeah, it was Midwest, and we actually weren't set on Northwest Arkansas. We weren't set on. We looked at Kansas City. We looked at Memphis. We looked at Dallas.
Just wanted to be close to an airport.
Yeah, I wanted to be conveniently located by an airport that was national, and really, we were looking for a school for Eve because Christian felt like she could, if she was close enough, within driving's distance to see them, that would be good, as long as we could find a good school for Eve, because she was accepted into a really high quality high school, private school in Naples. And to get her away from that, we needed something that was just as high quality. And we found it in Bentonville.
Nice.
Yeah, it was the Walton family that started Walmart. They started a private school down there, and it's a college, kind of a college prep high school. Well, grade 6 through 12, and she's just loving it
and doing really well, right?
Doing really well. Yeah, she's like me. She needs a challenge, and if she's got a challenge, she can thrive.
Okay, well, maybe she won't find that in her husband.
Yeah, we hope so.
And you're back in our industry. You're back with horseshoers and horse owners and that sort of stuff. And every time I see you, you're just smiling big.
It's unfair because there are so many people that would love to go to the clinics and contests and events that I get to go to. I get paid to go to just because of the quality people that I get to hang out with. And if you didn't like farriers, my job would be a nightmare.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Because I hang out with farriers all day, every day. And sometimes I compete when I go to the contest just for fun, if it's within driving distance and I can bring my truck. But just the quality of people in our industry is just phenomenal.
Yeah, very cool. I really appreciate you telling your story. So now, can you tell me a joke?
Oh, yeah. Let's see. So you know how you make holy water?
Tell me.
So you take normal water and you boil the hell out of it.
Okay. There you go. And so sometimes you put it on somebody, it burns them, then because you didn't let it cool down, huh? All right, that's a good one. That's a good one. And then, can you teach me something? This is Kelly's contribution.
I'm going to do a dry run on what I'm getting ready to tell the students. I'm actually in Heartland, in the Heartland for graduation, and Chris asked me to speak to them. And so, yeah, I'm going to tell you how to make a good first impression.
Very good.
How about that?
Well, that's something you know a lot about, because I remember when I first met you, my first impression of you was before you got behind the anvil that first time.
So Chris saw me and I was taking the price tags off my tools, and I was wondering which end of the hammer to hold. So there you go. That's how I made my first impression. But so number one is your appearance and your speech, because most likely your customers are going to either speak to you on the phone or speak to you in person the first time. If you're not able to carry a conversation and you look like a bum, that's going to be their first impression of you. And it's going to be a hard one to get over. That's why I put it number one. The next thing is less important, but remarkably hard to find, and that's someone that shows up on time. You will be amazed at how that adds to a person's opinion of you. Just think about this. This is the snowball in action here. I've got 6 things here. You can do a couple of them well, and it doesn't matter. If you do none of them well, it really matters. But if you do all of them well, it matters in a good way. Being kind of sober, I put that one in there kind of to be funny.
Kinda?
So kind of, it depends. We're farriers. So if you walk up and you say, hey, hand me a beer, I don't trim flat unless I have at least one in me. That's going to be a tough first impression.
Like, I've often heard you can't drink all day if you don't start in the morning, though.
That's right. Then number 4 is tools and equipment. I don't want to stress people's trucks or rigs because, that's a tough one. But the appearance of everything that you have, if you're walking in with I don't care if you have GE tools and the finest shoes and nails, if you walk up with a cardboard box and throw those down next to the horse, that's going to be a bad first impression. So if your truck isn't, the newest model with the newest Promised Land trailer behind it, so you can't, look as professional a farrier as some people, that's okay. You don't have to have that. But if your truck is clean and everything is in order, people see that. The last 2 things are you personally, and it's your knowledge, your farrier knowledge, and that has to do with anatomy. And then lastly, also horsemanship. So you can combine those 2 and put them into one. Your knowledge of the horse and your ability to get around the horse are going to be huge first impression. If I show up and I don't know fronts from hinds, the customer will know that. If I bring a cardboard box with all my tools in it and my car breaks down in their driveway and I look like a bum, but I'm only about half sober, and you're late, guess what? You're not coming back, you're not getting any referrals. So that's it.
We did a show last year, and we were going to continue it this year. We just didn't. We weren't able to really put it together. But I am looking for a cameraman producer that can do another show about the Heartland, telling the story of these students and what they survived to get through here.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you that are out there, if you are a cameraman with editing skills that has a little bit of knowledge about horseshoeing, or at least willing to learn, we are looking to fill a spot.
And you become part of the family, because I've known both of them and their characters.
Well, our last guy, he did such a beautiful job. He was such a wonderful guy. We just need to change the storytelling a little bit.
Good.
I've been wanting to put that out there in the world in case it's listened to by the right person. So, Is there anything that I haven't asked that you'd like to talk about?
Being here at Heartland, if you haven't been, and I was fortunate for the last 2 years, I got to go over to Stoneleigh and meet a lot of UK, British farriers, European farriers, just industry people also. It's not uncommon to be asked about Heartland.
Oh, really?
And
cool.
Yeah, when you're overseas, and especially at Stoneleigh. And so I feel like it's been a transformative place in my life, obviously in my career. Even when I was in between getting back into the horseshoeing business, I missed it. So
being a Heartlander is kind of special.
It's crazy, yeah.
To be able to get a buckle and a certificate from here is, well, it's just not to be understated how difficult that is.
And now I get to talk to a whole bunch of them in the next room here today.
We're going to have like an epic graduation.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
I don't know if I've ever had this high a number. I think we have 17 journeymen, and I believe a full 13 of them are going to get a diploma, which is unprecedented, really. In your class, how many journeymen were there?
11.
And how many got a diploma?
4.
Yeah, that's more common.
Yeah. And 2 of us were the old guys. I was 46, and so was Adrian.
But what you had was work ethic.
Oh, sure.
Well, and so did Adrian. You remember? So Adrian did 23 final horses in a row, like every day, and he diminished. Like the first 5 or 6, he was doing okay, and then for like the next 18 or so, every day he looked like a shadow, a little bit smaller Adrian, a little bit more of a shadow, and then finally pulled it off, huh?
The funny thing about that was it was the last possible opportunity that there was going to be for him to do a horse. So that if he didn't pass that one, there just wasn't another one to do. I mean, it was just you get to go home without a diploma, and he did it.
Yeah, it was
So
pretty
yeah,
amazing.
it was really, and it was the second one that day. So yeah, that was crazy.
I was really worried we were going to kill that guy
Yeah, yeah, an old guy doing 2 journeyman runs
while in school.
while in school.
So for those of you that don't know, in order to graduate from the Journeyman Farrier course, which Mark has done, part of it, the practical part of it, is a journeyman run. So you got to do 4 handmaids in 2 hours clipped on the feet and to a standard. So you got to pass your hoof prep, you got to pass your shoe quality, you got to pass your fit, and you pass your nailing and finish. A boy from South Africa just passed right before we come in here, and
That was a big smile.
well, it's been a long road. It's been really nice to see him climb that mountain. We'll see. There's another one from New Zealand out there going now. We'll see how that ended up.
This is a neat place. It's a neat place, and for those of you that haven't been here, if you have an opportunity to take the blacksmith course, you can be here for a week or two and kind of get the feeling, and you're walking on hallowed ground.
Well, Mark, as always, anytime I get to spend with you is a pleasure. And,
Thank you, Chris.
Getting to hear this whole story like this has been amazing. If you guys are at a clinic or a contest and you see Mark there with victory, walk up, tell him you heard the podcast, and thank you very much for listening. Good job.
Thanks.
My son Cody has always had a mind that works in an engineering mechanical way that allows him to solve problems that some people, like me, don't even know exist. His fuller is a perfect example. I've been making shoes since 1990 and have used just about every type of creaser there is out there. Some drive well, some don't, but to me they were all pieces of metal on a handle with an end to hit and a sharp end to make the crease. Cody started playing around with the geometry and heat treating of his fullers, and it was amazing how I can crease with one of his tools with a lot less effort. It takes 3 passes with another brand, Cody's will make it in 2. Well, I don't know how he did it, but I do know that his tools work with precision and accuracy that many others don't, allowing me to do a better job because they have a quality that I can count on. From his punches to his tongs, you'll not find a better tool to make your life as a farrier easier. Check out his line of tools at CodyGregoryLLC.com.